Are we ready?
All set.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our second Export Pro Series webinar, brought to you by the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center Network. My name is Chad Hoffman, and I'm the International Trade Consultant responsible for developing and managing the Go Global initiative statewide for the SBDC network. Today's webinar, entitled Global Opportunities Abound for Wisconsin Companies, features Brad Schneider from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or WEDC. Before I introduce Brad, I wanted to remind everybody to sign up for our Go Global newsletter, which just had its third edition released yesterday. The objective of the Go Global initiative, the newsletter, and the Export Pro series of webinars is to provide direct assistance to Wisconsin companies to learn about and leverage the many trade resources and programs at the local, state, and federal level. With the advent of the internet, international licensing agreements, global contract manufacturing, and cost-effective intermodal shipping, there are more opportunities today to export a product or service than ever before. Please contact me to learn more about the Wisconsin SBDC, how the SBDC network can assist your business to grow into new international markets. As for today's webinar, the prospect of one or more vaccines being distributed worldwide in 2021 will allow for some return to normalcy. However, other aspects of doing business, especially on an international scale, will be forever changed. As you will hear today, the WEDC has implemented several changes to their services, and I honestly believe that will make it easier for Wisconsin companies to take advantage of opportunities in international markets in the future. Brad Schneider is the Market Development Director at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or WEDC. Brad has been with the WEDC since its inception in 2011, as well as with its predecessor agency, the Wisconsin Department of Commerce, since 1999. Based out of Milwaukee, Brad serves as an in-house expert on all things exporting and has global market responsibilities covering the Americas and Oceania. Brad became a Certified Global Business Professional, or CGBP, in 2005, 3 years before me, I might add. CGBP is an accredited Association of Small Business International Trade Educators, or NASBITE. Brad has also worked for several private companies in various international roles and has over 20 years of total international experience, including a BA in International Relations from UW-Whitewater. We'll have about 10 minutes for questions at the end of the webinar, but please submit those at any time via the chat. With that, Brad, you can start your presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. And welcome everyone to today's session. I'm happy to see a few familiar faces, and as well as see some new names and companies listed as registrants as well. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Brad Schneider. I am with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, working within our global trade and investment team at WEDC. First, I guess, again, one quick thank you to Chad and the Wisconsin SBDC network for hosting today's Export Pro series session, and for further assisting companies and promoting export trade across the entire state. So WEDC, many of you I would suspect are familiar with us, but just for a reminder, WEDC is the state's lead economic development agency, working in a number of different areas, from business retention and business attraction initiatives to supporting the entrepreneur and innovation economy here in Wisconsin, as well as supporting local communities in the development of their infrastructure to support high-paying, quality jobs here in the state, as well as just general marketing of the state across the U.S. and across the world. And then specifically today, and the team that I work with, the Global Trade and Investment team that you'll be hearing more about throughout our session today. But you can see our overall mission. It's really just to support and position our companies, our communities, and our industry clusters to thrive in a globally competitive economy. With respect to our international team and the global trade and investment team, it's a new name for us, so I'm still getting used to saying it as well. But we're focused on two main aspects, two main drivers for the economy. One being the acceleration of exports, which will be the focus of today's presentation and my remarks, but also promoting Wisconsin as a destination for foreign direct investment. And a number of my team members are focused on some of those areas and aspects. In terms of our strategy, this will be what we're talking about further and in some future slides today, so I won't necessarily take the deep dive into those right here and now, but we have a number of very specific focused programs and services that can be used by Wisconsin companies to further support your growth initiatives when it comes to international expansion. But we don't do it alone. We have a number of export partners, and we really are blessed, I think, here in Wisconsin to have such a strong export ecosystem in place that really work well together. Whether it's my organization, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or it's our partners at the federal level, the U.S. Commercial Service team based in Milwaukee, to our partners at the Wisconsin Manufacturing and Extension Partnership, as well as Manufacturing Outreach Center at UW Stout, my colleagues at the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, which is the DATCAP indication there, to our partners in academia, but whether it's our technical college system, whether it's the UW system, and certainly this is where the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center network would fit in terms of their partnership and strong work through CHAD statewide with regards to export promotion, and then our private partners, whether it's your bankers and logistic firms to your accounting firms, law firms, etc. Everyone who kind of has a role in the export process. So we are really blessed here in Wisconsin to have such a strong statewide team to support your efforts. But now, kind of, why is it important for companies to consider exporting? And I won't do a too deep of a dive into some of this, and I know many of you may have heard me share some of this information in the past, but I think it is always good just to set the stage, if you will, in terms of what are the current demographic realities around the world, and why is it important for Wisconsin companies to become proactively engaged in exporting. The reality is 80% or so of the world's purchasing power, 90-some% of its economic growth, and over 95% of the consumers globally are based outside of the U.S. Borders. From a population perspective, currently we have about 7 billion people on the planet. By the year 2025, it's expected to exceed 8 billion people, and by the year 2050, forecasts estimate it may be as high as 9.6 billion people on planet Earth. But it's not just that there are lots of people in other countries, it's that there are lots of people with a growing purchasing power. And this kind of new wave of affluent middle-class citizens is having a profound effect on global consumption. And we're really kind of reaching a tipping point. Over the last several years, global middle class has been growing quite dramatically. In the year 2000, which is now 20 years ago, the global middle class consumption was somewhere around $17 trillion across the world. And now in 2020, it's exceeded $35 trillion, so more than doubled in that 20-year time frame. And according to ING, the percentage of the world population defined as middle class will rise from its current level of about 23%, which is about 1.8 billion people, to as high as 52%, which would be about 4.9, maybe 5 billion people by the year 2050. And what are these new middle class consumers want? Well, first they have a higher disposable income, so they'll be wanting more innovative, high quality, safe products, the type of products that we make here in Wisconsin and sell internationally and are coveted internationally as well. In terms of benefits to your company in exporting, these are just some, 4 or 5, I guess, maybe high level benefits that I wanted to bring up as well. And really for SMEs, for small to medium sized enterprises, exporting is truly a high yield growth strategy. Like few others. It can help steady your cash flow. It can obviously help expand your sales. It can help bolster productivity as well as improve your overall competitiveness. One of those areas is higher revenues. The majority of companies making a profit in the U.S. manufacturing sector are those that have become engaged in international sales and exporting. A recent survey by the U.S. International Trade Commission found that, and I think it was for SMEs specifically, that for non-exporting SMEs, their average annual revenues was somewhere around $1.5 million, whereas the average annual revenue for SMEs that were engaged in exporting was over $3.8 million. Again, so about that two times higher in terms of revenue from at least from the results of that survey. The second bullet point there, exports truly can help drive overall company growth. Companies that export tend to get bigger faster because they have access to a larger market for their products than non-exporting companies would have. The third one, greater productivity. And I would say it's not just greater productivity, but it's also companies that export tend to be more innovative as well. And I think it's just in the process of exporting, exporters are then exposed to new technologies and new materials and new ways of thinking that can directly be relevant to their specific product or service. From an innovation perspective, a recent study from the University of Minnesota in partnership with the University of Southern California found that for each patent filed by a non-exporting company, the exporting company filed 7 patents during that same time frame. In terms of labor pool, with higher revenues, employers are able to pay higher wages, providing exporting companies access to a stronger labor pool. With more opportunity for professional growth as well and career enhancement that exporting firms can offer and provide and are appealing to job seekers out there. And the last is just higher valuations through the diversification of sales channels and markets that oftentimes reflect company strength when it comes to corporate valuation. So really the benefits of export trade prove to keep our companies, our communities, and our country intact. This is a slide. It's a few years old, but I think it still is relevant. While some of the numbers you see may have changed, I think the overall point of this slide still holds true today. And I would just focus on kind of the middle column there under U.S. exporters. In the year 2011, there were 293,000 companies that exported from the U.S. In the year 2012, it increased a bit to about, 302,000 U.S. companies that exported. But if we look at over both of those 2 years, only about, I'll say 200,000 companies exported their product or their service in both of those years. So I think the point that this slide makes, or that I'm trying to make, at least, is that it shows that U.S. companies have not been proactively pursuing or strategically and systematically pursuing exports in that kind of proactive or systematic manner. So that's one of the areas we want to further encourage and incentivize Wisconsin companies to truly incorporate exporting into their overall corporate strategy. And I'll share some of the programs and services we can offer and are available to you through some of our partners to be able to do that. Just to look at Wisconsin very high level in terms of kind of what our export profile is and what the impact of trade has on the state. In the year 2019, which is the last year we have full numbers on, we'll be getting the year 2020 here in a couple months, but Wisconsin ranked 22nd nationally in the total value of merchandise exports. In terms of a percentage, roughly around 9% of Wisconsin's gross state product is accounted for from our export trade, and about 8,800, we'll round up to 9,000 or so companies exported from Wisconsin locations in 2018. And most of them, 86% or so of those, are what would be considered small to medium-sized firms, accounting for, or those SMEs account for about a quarter or 27% of overall Wisconsin exports. From a jobs perspective, somewhere around 6.5–7% of Wisconsin's total private sector employment is linked to our manufacturing exports, accounting for somewhere around 125,000 jobs that are supported by Wisconsin merchandise exports. And that would include, direct jobs within your own firms in terms of employees that you may have, but that would also incorporate some of those more indirect jobs working, with the logistics firm who's helping you, move the products or preparing the documentation, things like that, in terms of the jobs impact within and throughout the state. Just to give you a quick visual perspective, how Wisconsin compares against other states. Mentioned in the previous slide, we ranked 22nd nationally. So those here in the darker blue, I guess, would be states that export more than Wisconsin, and those in the greenish gray are the states that export less than Wisconsin. And it, I guess you can just see it tends to be those states on the coast who have port facilities, as well as states like Wisconsin who are heavy manufacturing states, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, that are the top and primary exporting states from Wisconsin or from the U.S. Not knowing who we would have on the call and on the webinar, and in terms of where you're located within the state, I just thought I would include this quick slide as well. But this covers what's called metropolitan statistical areas. That's hard to say fast, but and Wisconsin has somewhere around, I think, 11 or 12 different MSAs, as they're referred to, and some of them across state borders. So you can see the first line there. It says Minneapolis, St. Paul, but a county or two on the western side of Wisconsin are included in the Minneapolis-St. Paul MSA. So kind of included them here, but you can just see kind of maybe be curious for some of you from different parts of the state, just to give you a sense for the impact that export trade has on your particular county or particular MSA. Some of them are county, maybe include just one county. Some of them include multiple counties as well. And now maybe to more of the, meat, if you will, of the discussion is just some of the specific programs, services that we can provide to support you. And we always like to say we provide export know-how, funding, and in-market services to companies all along the export continuum to help advance them further and faster in international markets. Another way we like to say it is we provide the brains, the bucks, and the being there in terms of supporting you internationally. And I'll talk about kind of each of these areas as we proceed through the next number of slides. Just from, a general kind of information, making it available to you on our website with the link shown there. We have an Exporting 101 page, and this would be a spot where you can easily access what we call some export fast facts documents. Again, difficult to say fast. I think we have about 20 or so of them available. And these would cover kind of, the fairly typical type questions that we oftentimes get, whether it's, what sort of export documentation is required for shipping my product to, a specific country, or how can I, better ensure I get paid for for my sale and securing those sales and various aspects that on a day in, day out basis, I'm working with Wisconsin companies on and helping them answer. So to make it more accessible to them, we've made these export fast facts available to them. There's a lot of information out there online, and this will hopefully help get you to the answers to your questions more quickly. So it's a good starting point for looking into some of the answers that you may have or answers that you may be looking for with questions you may have when it comes to some of the exporting basics, if you will. We also make available a newsletter, which we call INTERCONNECT. Comes out quarterly. These are just two quick kind of snapshot ones of previous INTERCONNECT newsletters that went out. But as I mentioned, it's quarterly, comes right into your email inbox, that can provide some market specific data and perspectives from in-country experts. It can help provide other market updates and insights, best prospects, and really just helps keep you informed on what's happening in certain markets that may impact your ability to sell your product there, whether it's economic changes, whether it's political changes, things along those lines that are good for you to know and important for you to consider as you're either looking to grow or expand into certain markets. So again, free, easy way of getting information right at your fingertips with regards to happenings around the world, and as well, we make you aware of different opportunities, trips, trade ventures, programs, and things that we may have available to you to support you. Another program that's not necessarily specific to our international programs, this can be used by any and all companies in Wisconsin, but we are finding a number of our exporting companies are using this more and more to just kind of further promote and take pride in, if you will, the fact that this product was built in Wisconsin or grown in Wisconsin, or as you can see, the different, brewed in Wisconsin, depending upon what would be most, relevant to your product and your industry. It's a no cost way of putting a stamp on your product. Some have, some companies I know internationally not only are putting it on their equipment, but are putting it on their packaging that they're sending, around the world, that their product was, built or manufactured in Wisconsin. And I think it's just a nice way. I think we here in the Midwest and Wisconsin aren't oftentimes great at, marketing ourselves or tooting our own horn, if you will. And this is just another nice way of doing that. Again, whether it's internationally or even just for some of your domestic shipments of products. So the EXPORTECH program, I seeing a number of faces and names on the call and on the webinar today. I know a number of people would be familiar with this, but wanted to share just a little bit for those of you who may not be. But the EXPORTECH program is not unique to Wisconsin. It is offered around the U.S. in a number of different states. It came out of the U.S. Commerce Department, and it's administered then at the state level through the manufacturing extension partnerships. And Wisconsin, because of our strong manufacturing heritage, we're blessed with two of them. The Wisconsin Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or WMEP, as you may know it, and the UW Stout Manufacturing Outreach Center, of course, located and based out of UW Stout in Menominee. And so the EXPORTECH program is a proven export strategy development program that's designed to help speed a company's go-to-market timeline by developing a customized international growth plan for the company's product in key markets. Participating companies receive access to topic matter experts. They receive individualized coaching and consulting, customized support, and guided development of an international growth plan. The program provides a rather unique focus on kind of that C level or top management level success factors, and aims to provide companies with early export success at a reduced risk. And it takes place over a 3-month session. So if you look at the slide here, you see session 1, session 2, session 3. Those columns, you can visualize that as month 1, month 2, and month 3. The first session, as you can see, just kind of high level there, talking about the imperative, much of which we're talking about, and I'm talking about here with you today, why it's important for companies to consider and incorporate exporting into their overall growth strategies. We'll start talking and finding out from the companies, what is it that has kept you, if you will, from pursuing exporting more proactively. Because what we want to do then is take away those barriers, take away those obstacles or excuses, if you will, by then more customizing the second session around those obstacles that were identified by the participating companies and bringing in experts in those areas, whether it's finance, whether it's IP protection, whether it's logistics, etc. We can then customize that second session to bring those experts to the participants. In between each of those sessions, there is work that's done, homework, if you will, that you would be, coming back and kind of presenting at each of the sessions. And then ultimately, during that third session, you would be presenting your plan or at whatever stage you have the plan at that point. We know you're not going to, have every T crossed and I dotted, if you will, with regards to your plan in that 3-month time frame. But you would present your plan along with the target markets, top, say, 3 target markets that you've identified. And we and our other partners at the U.S. Commercial Service and the other partner organizations supporting EXPORTECH would work with you on specifically, customizing each individual company's market matrix, if you will, helping you identify, what are those key indicators that are important for you, because for one participant in a certain industry is very different than what it may be for another participant in another industry. So we'd work very hands-on and close and individually with each of the participants to develop those leading indicators, developing that matrix, which then helps you identify some of the top market opportunities. And then you build that plan around those 3 markets, presenting it to a panel during that third session. It's very much meant to be a build you up. It's not meant to be a tear you down approach in terms of your plan. And it's more, the panel is there to be kind of a sounding board and provide some constructive criticism, if you will, in terms of, okay, this is a great start, but you may want to think about this, or if you're looking at that market, you may also want to keep, certain things in mind. So it's they're there to be kind of that sounding board and further Rolodex, if you will, of resource as you come out of the program. I would say as well, we at WEDC then provide some support, both technical and financial support for participants. Financially, we provide a scholarship on the front end to help offset some of the costs for companies to participate in the program. And then on the back end, through the kind of implementation phase, obviously we want companies to then take action on the plan that they've developed. We don't want it to just sit on their desk or sit in a drawer and no action be taken. So we provide some specific programs and in-country services complementary for companies that graduate from the program to keep that momentum going with regards to the plan that they've developed. And I'm going to see if this works. Hopefully it will. I have a video, and I don't know if Giacomo did join us. I saw his name listed as participating, but we have a quick video of Karma Labs, who participated in EXPORTECH a couple of years ago now. So let me just see if this works. Hopefully you're seeing my face right there, and I'll hit play.
Brad, it seems to be muted.
It's muted?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then I will skip that. I don't know. My apologies for that, but he was just saying all the great things about EXPORTECH. So let me get back to where we were. I think we were here. So anyways, I guess for anyone interested, the next session, we do have a current cohort of, I think, 5 companies going now, but our next session will be starting up in February of 2021. So after the holidays and after the new year, I can certainly provide some more specific information for anyone who's interested in that. It will be conducted virtually. And the last few sessions have been done virtually for obvious reasons. But I can definitely provide more detail and more specifics for anyone who may be interested in hearing a bit more. In terms of our global network, so WEDC maintains what we call a global network of authorized trade representatives. So these are business and trade consulting firms who live and operate in different countries around the world. You can see from this slide the different colors of countries that we have coverage in, as well as then the different colors designating kind of who within the WEDC team is responsible for those particular markets. You can see me and cover the countries colored in green. My colleague Stanley Frang covers Europe, Middle East, and Africa. My colleague Fan Fu covers Asia, China, India, Southeast Asia, and my colleague Francisco Carrillo covers Mexico and Spain currently. And there may be some changes periodically made to our coverage areas, but these are folks who are based here in Wisconsin. You can see their contact information here. These would be first step folks to contact if you have questions or issues or want to talk about opportunities in these various markets. And then, we would be able to provide you and connect you in with our network globally. We have coverage in, I think, somewhere around 82 different countries around the world, if I'm not mistaken. And these are, like I said, private trade consulting firms that we as a state and you as a Wisconsin-based business would have access to kind of be your eyes and ears in those markets to help you stay, up to date and informed of what's happening in those markets, as well as providing some specific services in country that can help you make determinations in terms of what opportunities may present themselves for you in those particular markets. and I'll talk a little bit more about them now. Let me just, I think there's one more. Yes. So this would be just kind of a core of the type of services that these authorized trade representatives would provide. The first two columns on the left would be the ones I think, I would consider their bread and butter, if you will, and what they do day in and day out for Wisconsin companies. The first is what we would call kind of our market assessment. And I think, as the name suggests, it's there to help you gather market intelligence and market information before you commit too much time resource, financial resource, or personnel resource to a market. This market assessment can help you gather the type of information that's listed there in the bullet points. Obviously, depending upon your industry, depending upon your product, you may have very specific questions as well that would be and should be incorporated into that market assessment. But it's really meant to help gather that information on the front end before, again, you're committing too much time and financial and personnel resource to the market, so that you're making as educated and informed and of a decision as possible with regards to pursuing a particular market. The next step would kind of be generically what we call a partner search. So whether this is finding a dealer, a distributor, a rep, going direct to OEMs, depending upon what your kind of go-to-market strategy is, our trade reps globally are there to help you kind of pre-qualify and pre-vet, if you will, prospective partners in their country, and go out to them, provide them some initial information on who you are, on what your products are, on what your kind of value proposition is, competitive advantage, all those sorts of things, and they'd come back to you then with a list of companies in whichever country the project would be conducted in, providing contact information, providing information on who they spoke to, what the feedback was. Depending upon the industry, it may include, it's hard to say a specific number, but they would include, a list of saying, here's the 5 or 10 or whatever that number is of companies we reached out to. They are very interested in pursuing or having a direct engaging with the Wisconsin company directly. Here's another 5 or 10 that we reached out to, but they said the timing maybe wasn't quite right, but it's still important to know, and maybe in 6 months or a year's time, would be someone worthwhile to pursue as well. And then, maybe there's some they said, well, we tried to reach out to these, but never got a response, but still share that information with you. So I think it's all still important information to know. And typically these, whether it's the market assessment or partner search, from a time perspective, probably takes somewhere 6 to 8 weeks time frame, somewhat depending upon the scope of that particular project. And just building it back into the EXPORTECH, this would be kind of the complementary implementation, or post EXPORTECH complementary service that companies would get. They could receive a complementary market assessment or complementary partner search in one of their target markets if they come out of the EXPORTECH program. And then the trade reps are there as well to help with business meeting facilitation, whether that's in person, hopefully come 2020, 2021 again, or virtually, in terms of, they can help set up, Zoom calls and team calls and whatever else. So if and when the time comes when you are traveling again internationally, they can help with various travel logistics as well, whether it's helping you, find a hotel, or you need a driver, or you need a interpreter while you're in country, that sort of thing. Our trade reps are certainly available to help connect you in with those type of service providers in country that can help you. And then, customized projects, if there's something that kind of falls outside of the realm of these things, they're certainly available to you to support you in a more customized project if it comes to that. This would just be what a typical market assessment might look like. Again, just from an overview perspective, this was one that was conducted by our trade rep previously in India for a Wisconsin company. But just to give you kind of a high level view of what sort of information is typically included in the market assessment. And then I think the next slide would show, this one was in Poland, but what a partner search would entail. So the partner search would include some, market information, but the focus, as the name would suggest, is more on the identification of potential partners for the company in that particular market. Moving on, and I just should check my time. Yep. Trade ventures. So this, Chad mentioned some changes to our programming. Certainly with travel restrictions and things in place, traveling to markets is much more difficult and not as viable, if you will. So we have moved our current slate of trade ventures to virtual format. So we conducted one to Germany a month or two ago. We're in the middle of a venture to Korea. And then coming up, you can see February to Mexico, March to Canada, April to China, and then the June to Poland and Germany. We're still holding out as TBD, depending upon vaccines and travel restrictions there. So whether that one's the more traditional version or virtual, we will be making those determinations as it gets a little closer. But some of the benefits we think to virtual is for participants is their ability to meet with prospects throughout the country versus being focused on a specific region or city. So for example, Canada, which is one that I would work most closely with. If it were a traditional trip, we'd be going to, Toronto and Montreal as an example. And your meetings would be specifically in and around Toronto and specifically in and around Montreal. Whereas virtually, we can connect you with companies in Alberta or Vancouver. And you can do it from the convenience of your office or your desk or your home, depending upon where you're working these days. As well as, from a cost perspective, there's no, international travel costs that would be, added on to your participation costs. So for all of our virtual trade ventures, the cost for participation is $500. We'll be sending, I don't know if the Mexico, it should be out, or if not, it's coming out very shortly. I know the Canada information will be coming out probably in the next week or so with regards to kind of the formal flyer and registration link and those sorts of things. So if any of these are markets that you're interested in pursuing or looking to further grow and expand in, certainly feel free to let me know or whichever of my colleagues may cover those particular countries. The other area that we have made a change is in our grant program. We call it the International Market Access Grant, or IMAG. And the main change here is previously there had been a 30% match requirement for companies to meet. But due to the pandemic, at least for this current fiscal year, the current state fiscal year, we have waived that 30% match requirement. So an example for a non-export company, they can receive up to $10,000. Previously, they would have had to match that, $10,000 with $3,000 of their own funds. But this year they would not need to do that. And the designation between $10,000 and $25,000 for companies who have not gone through EXPORTECH, as I mentioned, they can receive up to $10,000 in grant funding annually. whereas those that have gone through the EXPORTECH program can receive up to $25,000 annually. What else is important to mention? In terms of the process, application process, the main point I would make is to make sure that you get approved for the grant activities prior to incurring the expenses. So obviously you can't retroactively request grant funding for a trade show or and other eligible expense that you've previously done. You need to apply, ask for the funds, get approved for those funds. You'll receive a letter saying, yes, your application's been approved. At that, at which point you can then begin to incur the expenses that you would be seeking funds for. In terms of what are some of the typical expenses that they're used for, trade shows and conferences, maybe not as much currently, but maybe there's trade shows and conferences in your industry that are being conducted virtually. Or, as vaccines and things come out, ones that you may be looking at, again, attending in person, into 2021, that you would want to consider using the grant funds for. It can be used for business matchmaker services. So whether that's through our global trade network, as I mentioned, in the 80-some countries around the world that WEDC has, or maybe it's through the U.S. Commercial Service and the U.S. Embassy network around the world, or even specific to your industry. If there's an industry association or a consultant who specializes in your industry, you can utilize them and utilize grant funds to help help pay them to do some of that matchmaking and market research on your behalf. It can be as well used for product certification, trademark registration, things along those lines for your products in international markets that oftentimes for small to medium-sized companies can be cost prohibitive to get products certified, whether it's CC mark for Canada or CE mark for Europe, etc. These grant funds can be used to cover some of those expenses. Another area we're seeing more uptake in companies utilizing the funds for is in updating and localizing their website, whether it's translating websites into Spanish or German or other languages, and just making it more culturally acceptable in different markets, maybe even hosting the website in Canada with a .ca or in Germany with a .de, those sorts of things. The funds can also be used for. Of course, translation services, interpretation services, things like that. And then education and training. So, within your teams, you have folks probably in shipping and logistics who may handle some of the documentation and need some training on that, or folks in your finance and payment and collections area who may need some training on international payment terms, etc. So it can be used for further developing some of those internal competencies within each of your teams and within each of your companies. So this is much of our team, not our entire team, but much of our team. You can put some names with faces here. Katie Sinnott is our VP of the Global Trade and Investment Division. And then the four folks, Stanley, myself, Fanfu, and Francisco, we are the market development directors with the different markets of responsibility around the world. And then for the grant program, Aaron Zitzelsberger is the grants manager. He and another colleague by the name of Katie Wall are responsible for our grants program. So they would be folks who you can talk to directly on that. Of course, any of us can help answer questions on that, but Aaron knows all the ins and outs and specifics with regards to our grant program. So with that, I'm going to maybe mute mine and let mute my microphone and let Lisa Stout, who's my colleague with the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture and their International Agribusiness Center, share some information on some of the specific programs available to Wisconsin food and agricultural companies, in case that's of interest to any of the participants. Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks, Brad, and thanks, Chad. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
Great. Thanks for organizing this seminar and webinar this morning. It's wonderful to be able to share information about the services of the International Agribusiness Center at the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Our services are very similar to those that are offered by Brad and his colleagues at WEDC. We provide export education and company consultations for food, forestry, and agricultural companies based in Wisconsin. We bring in buyers from foreign countries and arrange one-on-one meetings around the state with appropriate companies. We organize trade missions abroad, and we provide trade show enhancement services at foreign trade shows around the world. And we also have export marketing funding that I'll talk about in a future slide. The branded program is a program offered by Food Export Association of the Midwest, of which we are a member. It is a state regional trade group organized out of Foreign Agriculture Service of USDA. And through this organization, we provide branded program funding, which is a marketing dollars that can help a company to export. It's a 50% cost share reimbursement program. Companies apply to use the funding. Much like the IMAG, you can't expend funds to get reimbursed unless you apply for them first. And it's for food and agricultural products only, with a minimum of 50% US ag origin. And it's mainly small companies like we have in Wisconsin as defined by SBA guidelines, and also agricultural cooperatives can participate in this program. Companies can apply for up to $300,000 per year for international marketing expenses. And much like the IMAG program, it covers really the same expenses: trade show booths, social media campaigns in foreign countries, advertising, PR, website globalization, translation of labels and packaging, which is a huge deal because some countries do require that your labels are translated into their language and to their specifications for packaging. So that money can go a long way in helping you to get those labels translated for your products. And also this program will also reimburse travel for companies who are going to foreign trade shows. Next slide. This is our staff at the International Agribusiness Center. We're a staff of 4. Mark Rodehesh is our bureau director. And we are divided by product category and geographical area. So Jennifer Liu handles livestock genetics, wood products, ginseng, and her area is Asia. Ashwini Rao works with food and food ingredient companies, and her area is Latin America, Europe, India, and the Middle East. And I cover food and food ingredients as well, and I cover Asia and Canada and the Middle East and Oceania. So this is our group. And we also partner along with WEDC. We often collaborate with Brad and his colleagues on activities and projects. We work with other state departments, DNR specifically, and also the university system and UW-Madison, as well as our partners at WMEP and MOC. We're also a member of FAB Wisconsin and work on projects with them. And our federal partners, of course, USDA is a huge partner for us, and Foreign Agriculture Service, and we're a member of several organizations, including the U.S. Dairy Export Council, Food Export Midwest, U.S. Livestock Genetics Export Council, and the American Hardwoods Council, because we also work with the forestry industry. Thank you, Brad, for letting me share today.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And I know I'm looking at my clock. I see we're running up on the hour, so we definitely want to be mindful and sensitive to each of your schedules. So maybe with that, and this is being recorded, so we will Chad will get this link and make it available to each of you as well. But in case there were any last minute questions or anything in the chat, I haven't been looking, Chad, but wanted to set aside a minute or two at least for any questions.
Just one question, and then I have a separate question, but first from Doug Biggs. I know that we can't really isolate. The question is, how have export sales been impacted by the lack of ability to travel in 2020? I don't think that we can actually segment out how much of the impact is due to lack of travel, but Brad, do you happen to know the statistics? I think it was 20% this year is down compared to last.
Making sure I'm not muted. Yeah, I wish I had the most recent trade data at my hands, which I don't, but I do have at least from the January through July of 2020 timeframe. So, I know COVID kind of hit in March, so this would incorporate, the early first 3 months, if you will, of the pandemic. U.S. exports in that January through July timeframe were down about 16%, as compared to Wisconsin exports, which were down during that same timeframe about 10%. And we don't have full year 2020 yet. Obviously, we're almost done with the year, but not quite. I think we do have now through the first 3 quarters. I should have had it at the ready. My apologies that I don't have it. I can definitely send something out with that update. It definitely is down. I think Wisconsin has generally been performing better than the U.S. average with regards to trade. But yeah, it's definitely down somewhere in probably that 10 to 15% range. Oftentimes, this fourth quarter, the kind of October through December, in a traditional year is the largest quarter of activity. This year, I'm not sure that will be the case. But let me get some information out. Chad, I'll send it to you since you have contact information maybe for everyone, and it can go out to the whole registration.
Yeah, I can send that out when we send the link to the video. And also, but on the flip side, you've seen an increase in participants in the trade ventures since they've gone virtual,
True.
correct?
That's very true. Yeah, the two that I mentioned there, the Germany, I think we had 14 participating companies. And the Korea one, which is kind of, we're just wrapping up, I think we had 8 or 9 companies, which I think, and again, it varies from year to year, but, on average, I would say the traditional trips have been somewhere in the 4 to 5, 5 to 8 range probably in terms of companies participating. So yeah, the virtual has been a nice, I don't want to say surprise, but I think the convenience of it, again, not having to travel, folks not having to be away from their office and their company for a week or 10 days or whatever the length of time may be. But they can still now, with Teams and Zoom and the other platforms that are available that we're much like we're using today, make it quite easy to still connect. It's not the same, but a lot of these meetings are initial meetings, getting to know each other, seeing if there is a fit kind of thing. So for those purposes, I think the virtual format does almost as good of a job as the face-to-face in the same room type approach, and we'll certainly get back to that. But I think there may be some virtual aspects that we'll continue to use as we go forward with some of our trade ventures and other kind of delegation type trips.
Great. And then my last question was regarding the IMAG. The cash match requirement, is that still postponed for the time being?
Yes, I hope I tried to make mention of that. So the 30% match requirement is no longer required, or at least in terms of this fiscal year. So if a company is requesting $10,000 in an IMAG grant, traditionally they would have had to match $3,000, but this year they would not have to do that, and don't need to do that. And conversely, you know, if it were an EXPORTECH company and they were requesting 25,000, I'm going to put my math to the test. 30% of that is like 7,500 or something like that. They are not required or do not need to meet that matching fund requirement for at least for this fiscal year. We'll see what our next fiscal year entails, and just for reference, the state fiscal year runs July through June. So we're in the middle of our current fiscal year 21. So the window, and I should have mentioned that, but the window currently is open for receiving applications for the grants, and that will remain open through probably early April. So between now and April, the next or so, if there were some activities that you'd like to utilize the grant funds for, that window for receiving and accepting applications will run through that early April timeframe.
Okay, and then Joe Sable just asked a follow-up question. For existing IMAG grants, the match continues, which, Joe, we had this question come up at our last webinar, and the answer to the question is it depends on the contract. So if your contract was in the previous fiscal year, then yes, the match is still a requirement. If it'll clearly state in your agreement whether or not you're responsible for the match.
That is correct.
Great. Well, again, thanks everybody. And as Brad mentioned, we will make the webinar link accessible in a couple of days. Also, you can access the first Export Pro Series webinar recording, which featured the U.S. Commercial Service. I'm happy to say, you know, this library is coming together where we're introducing you to, you know, the basic resources available to you, and we'll get more in depth as we go along. These webinars will be produced on a quarterly basis. So I want to thank Brad Schneider, Lisa Stout, and all of you for your time. Thank you very much, and we look forward to helping you get your exporting to the next level. Thank you.
Thank
you all. Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Hey, Brad, may I ask you a question?
Sure. Yes. Hello.
Hi. I don't know if it's true or not, but just want to know, like, if as a trade company, we don't have the power applied a code like an FDA code. So you want to export anything out of the country, only the factory can apply the code. So I don't know if you understand my question or not.
I'm not.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. What is the product?
No, because before I was search information about the cheese, I was want to export the cheese to out of our country, but I hear they said as a trade company, because we don't make the trade, right? We need to find the cheese company,
Yes,
and
sure.
then like not any factory they can export their food to out of the U.S. You have to apply like a number or something through FDA or a customer.